Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I want to make a second video about content creators and community, and I made a video yesterday in regard to that, and I wanted to make a second video today because I wanted to talk about some other issues about community and about being a content creator. Now, I'm going to make quite a few points again in this video, but I'm also going to put some of these points into context from my point of view, and I'm going to elaborate a bit more about some of the things that I'll be saying initially. So this video is going to be called What is Community? But it's going to have a number of different points in here. So first of all, to define the word community. If you have a look at the word community itself, you actually can divide it into two words, which are common and unity. So you get common unity. So if you think of the community word in that way, common unity, I think you get a better idea of what that word means. So looking at the word community and seeing it as common unity, it actually involves a wide general acceptance, equal treatment, equal regard, and no separate groups. So we're looking at common unity. So the next point I want to make is what happens where you have a type of community that is supposed to be common unity, and then you get hiving off into separate groups. Now, separate groups are to do with some kind of specialness. There's a special type of reason for the group, that the group members believe that there's a reason for that group. Now, when you get hiving off within a community, which is common unity, when you get that hiving off into special groups, that in itself can cause division within a community. Because groups are not community, they are groups, and they tend to develop into cliques. Because these groups are selective and conditional, and they usually have a group leader, even if the group leader is not an official group leader. It can be an unofficial group leader who calls themselves a group coordinator, but it's still a group leader. And if you have groups that are run by a content creator on YouTube or a channel holder, it becomes a type of fan club for that group leader. So that is why groups within or connected to a community, groups are not community itself. A community is common unity. it is not a group or groups, subgroups within that. Now, in my own experience, over 25 years, I have had membership or experience of many types of groups, several types of groups over 25 years. But these have been face-to-face groups, and they are not the same as YouTube. YouTube or online groups are more subtle, they have more things going on behind the scenes. There are nuances that are hidden, that can't be seen. Now, what I also want to make a point about spiritual groups. So I've been involved with many spiritual groups over 25 years. Spiritual groups tend to have more wounded individuals. Now, we are all wounded somewhere. But spiritual groups in particular, and I have seen this so many times, spiritual groups in particular can foster self-absorption and victim mode mindset. So there is quite a focus on self-wounds or victim mode. I've seen it many times. Now, what I want to say here is, I'm talking about this because society will not change if we do not look outside of ourselves and beyond our own wounds. Because we can't see outside of ourselves when we are focusing on our own wounds all the time. And self-help is not the only answer. Now, when I'm talking about being wounded, I have been there. I have not been involved in the spiritual scene for 25 years without having experienced that. I'm not talking as an observer who has not experienced these things. And when I'm talking about self-help here, yes, I have, of course, used many methods of self-help. But what I'm saying here is, self-help is not the only answer. Sometimes you actually do need to get qualified professional help if needed. I have done that. I have done that over, at different times over 25 years. I have used self-help methods as well, but there are times when the self-help methods are not enough. And yes, I did focus for too long on woundedness. I have been there. I have lived that. Tarot as therapy is not always enough either. And tarot as therapy can be a false reflection with our own subjective self-readings. So it's a matter of seeing what we want to see. So yes, I got into tarot 25 years ago. It began as a self journey. And yes, it was helpful. It did give me insights. But it was not going to be enough for therapeutic purposes. It was not going to be enough as a self-help method. At times I did have counselling, I did have qualified professional help, and I'm glad I did that. I would not have gotten to the stage where I am now. My boundaries are rock solid. My outlook is more balanced. I'm able to look outside of myself and outside of those things because of that. Channel rivalry does exist. There is channel rivalry to some degree experienced as a content creator here on YouTube. It's never mentioned, it's not allowed to be really talked about, but yes, it does exist. Behind the scenes, of course. And of course that causes a sense of division as well. Now, I've been content creator for 3 years now. There have been hardly any shout outs for my channel. No shout outs for me. I'm one of the best kept secrets on YouTube, still after 3 years. Because I have opinions. And because I am not a group member. That's the reality. Now I hope I've covered all the points I want to make there. Now I want to elaborate and put things into context as well, so people might be able to follow and understand a bit more of what I'm saying here. First point again about special groups. And I have been involved in many different types of groups over 25 years. I'm saying 25 years because that's when my spiritual path started, but it coincided with self-work and some other issues as well. Okay, so I've been involved in many different types of groups over 25 years. They unfortunately foster group think, where you start to think as a group instead of an individual person. So these groups are exclusive and diversive in nature in relation to the rest of society or community, which is common unity. Now, the types of groups I've been involved in, they are mainly spiritual or esoteric, but they also include gay groups. Yes, I am queer. I may lose a few subscribers saying that. So be it. So I've experienced gay groups as well. What I have found, regardless of the type of group, all of these things still happen. They are still exclusive, and they can be divisive in nature in relation to the rest of society or community, common unity. I have found education works better, regardless of the type of group, to encourage awareness. Like with my channel, I have allowed people to see me as a person first before talking about my individuality, which I just mentioned. I found, regardless of what type of group, it's like people who say, oh, why isn't spirituality more accepted? When I'm talking to people in everyday life, or people who I know, I allow them to get to know me first before I come around to mentioning that, oh yes, I'm a spiritual person. I have been for many years. Whatever it is. That is a better way than focusing on differences and then expecting people to accept or understand. The next point I want to talk about is assumptions. And this assumption thing also is kind of connected with privacy. If someone does not want to reveal aspects of themselves due to privacy or anything else, do not assume that they have not experienced A, B, or C issues. Just because they haven't talked about it does not mean they haven't not experienced those issues. So whatever the issue is, don't assume they've never experienced it because they've never said so. The next elaborated point I want to make is identifying with being wounded for too long. It's like being stuck in a stage of sorrow. And I have done that. I had spent years doing that. Not realising that I was doing it. Not fully realising it. That I was actually identifying with the sorrow, with the amount of sorrow that I have had in my life. Because you carry a sorrow for the lost life that you had wanted. So this is what happens if you identify with woundedness or with sorrow for too long. You don't realise you're doing it. And you get stuck there and you cannot see beyond yourself. You have difficulty doing that. And that is connected, as I said earlier on, with spiritual groups, because they do foster that focus on self-absorption and woundedness. Instead of, there is one thing to be working on that, but if you are not moving on well enough, you are still stuck, that is when you need the extra help in the form of qualified professional help or counselling that I mentioned. Now, the last thing I want, this is the summary now, so I hope everyone has bared with me up until now. Just going back to community, common unity again. Community and issues within society, it has to be worked on. It's not automatic. Now is the right time to look at our common unity. First, as people. So in other words, we are all people. So common unity, commonality first, before individuality. So focusing on differences, which is another form of division, focusing on differences, even with having some common interests, because that is what the spiritual or tarot community is. If you have special groups within a community, you are still focusing on differences, even though you have some common interests with the wider community. So even if you have the common interests, it's not enough. And society will not change if we make assumptions about people, and if we do not look outside of ourselves to see our humanity. So I'm saying here there will not be a ripple effect to society itself beyond community. There will not be a ripple effect into the larger society and the rest of the world if we cannot see outside of ourselves, and if we cannot have freedom of speech, if we cannot sort out these issues within a spiritual community. You know, we have to start with ourselves, and we have to start with what community actually is and what it actually means. Common unity. If we don't do that, we cannot have a ripple effect. We cannot improve society. And we will not be able to see outside of ourselves to see our humanity. So I hope everybody has bared with me with this video and the points that I really felt needed to be said. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.